Hi, my name is Heather Grant, and I'm the media liaison for the Alberta Teachers Association. Thank you for joining us today. The Alberta Teachers Association respectfully acknowledges that we are located on Treaty 6 territory, the traveling route, gathering place, and meeting grounds for many Indigenous peoples whose histories, languages, cultures, and traditions continue to influence our vibrant community. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. We recognize the land as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside on or are visiting. Jason Schilling, President of the Alberta Teachers Association, and Leanne Watson, ATA Executive Staff Officer and member of the government's Multidisciplinary Action Team, will provide statements in response to the Aggression and Complexity in Schools Action Team report. Once they conclude their statements, they'll answer your questions. Please use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen under the React tab. We'll call upon you in the order your hands are raised. Everyone will have the opportunity to ask a question and a follow-up question, and if we have time, we'll answer any additional questions you may have. If you need anything else following the availability, please reach out to myself, Heather Grant. At this point, I'd like to welcome ATA President Jason Schilling and hand it over to him.
Well, thank you, Heather, and good afternoon, everyone. Teachers need embedded time to prepare and support their students. Early learners need strong and reliable supports through PUF, funding that specifically targets our youngest learners who need extra support for success as they begin their schooling. Schools need a mandated student-teacher ratio so classrooms can actually function. Where have we heard these before? These are not new ideas. Teachers and school leaders have been calling for them for years. If you've attended any press conference we've held in the last 6.5 years, you've heard me say these exact messages. You've heard us say that aggression and complexity issues in schools are at a breaking point, that teachers, school leaders, and education assistants are being hit, bit, kicked, and spat at, that classrooms are overcrowded and supports are stretched beyond reason. We have raised these alarms in every form possible: press conferences, radio interviews, television broadcasts, at rallies across the province, and meetings with ministers past and present. And every time we have said the same thing: conditions are unsafe, support and funding are inadequate, and students are paying the price. Often, our concerns are dismissed. Today, we have a government report that confirms what the association has been saying for years. If you read the engagement findings on pages 8 through 14, you will see the reality laid bare. Classrooms are overwhelmed. Complexity is unmanageable. Early learners are falling behind. Teachers and school leaders do not have the time or resources they need to support students who deserve far better. This section is a damning representation of the systemic underfunding that has led us to this crisis in education that government continually fails to take responsibility for. So yes, we welcome many of the recommendations because we raised the alarm on them when they were cut or eroded. We support the call to hire more teachers in order to lower student-teacher ratios. We support the calling of bringing in more education assistants, occupational therapists, speech-language pathologists, and physical therapists. We agree that educators need time with families and clinicians in order to create and update learning plans that actually respond to students' needs. We fully support restoring and expanding early learning supports, including program unit funding for students in the early grades up to and including grade 1. But make no mistake, Alberta does not need another report that gathers dust on a shelf in the minister's office. Alberta needs implementation. Alberta needs transformation. Albertans demand action. We expect this government to take these recommendations and put them into practice, not someday, not when it's convenient, and not as optional guidelines. And let me be perfectly clear. We also expect government to fund these recommendations so that they are sustainable in the future. If this province wants real and lasting improvement, these recommendations must make their way into policy or the Education Act itself, so their importance does not fade and cannot be forgotten. We've now heard the Premier comment on striving towards ACAL student ratio numbers a few times now. My question is, if this is truly a goal, then put it into policy, set a deadline, and fund it accordingly. Teachers are done with promises. We are done with acknowledgments. We are done with temporary fixes that last only as long as the news cycle. And we are done with recycled press conference talking points. What Alberta needs now are concrete solutions that endure, solutions that cannot be erased by changing political winds, solutions that reflect the seriousness of the challenges documented in this report. Teachers have been calling for this for years. The teacher strike amplified the crisis and the need for improvement for teachers, school leaders, and students. The only question left is whether government will finally act in addressing the needs of public education. Thank you. And at this time, I'd like to invite our member of the Government Action Team and Association Executive Staff Officer, Leanne Watson, to share more about the report and its recommendations.
Thank you, President Schilling. It has truly been an honor to work with our team of teachers alongside the incredibly knowledgeable and dedicated educators and rights holders involved in the Aggression and Classroom Complexity Action Team. I want to acknowledge the tremendous commitment of everyone who contributed. When our work began, we quickly shifted the conversation. Instead of talking about aggression, we knew we needed to discuss what causes it. And the message was consistent and clear. What we are seeing in classrooms reflects unmet needs. Across the province, the complexity and size of today's classrooms mean that many students simply cannot access the level of support they require. And when student needs go unmet, we see behavior. We see distress, and we see escalation. These are not signs of failing children or inept teachers. It's quite the opposite. These are signs that the system is not keeping pace with the realities inside Alberta's schools. Further to that, our rural communities face limited access to services, and our urban areas experience concentrated needs. As a result, our students may go undiagnosed or wait extended periods of time for necessary interventions. To understand these realities more deeply, we spent the summer listening to outstanding professionals who came forward as panelists: school counselors, occupational and physical therapists, speech-language pathologists, classroom teachers, educational assistants, and administrators. They shared personal stories of classrooms in crisis mode, of children struggling to regulate, of staff stretched far beyond capacity, and of families trying to navigate a complex web of services. We approached every part of this work through a lens of support. We developed a framework to guide our strategies and keep us focused on our shared vision, a trusted education system that supports every child and prepares them for a successful future. We fully recognize that the challenges are vast and that there is no single fix. We hope that these solutions are heard and acted upon by the Alberta government in a way that honors the experiences of those who contributed to this work. The recommendations that I would like to highlight are hiring more teachers to reduce the student to teacher ratio, reduce our class sizes, and better meet individual student needs. Hiring additional EAs to support the growing complexity in our classrooms. Provide educators with embedded time to collaborate with external agencies. Strengthening admin guidance and procedures to help school leaders navigate communication with families in respectful and effective ways. Improving collaboration across ministries so clinical, therapeutic, and educational supports are aligned rather than siloed, as schools alone cannot meet the complex needs of our children. Allowing greater flexibility in how school authorities schedule mandated grade 1 through 3 literacy and numeracy assessments, and replacing mandatory kindergarten assessments with teacher-led developmental observations that better reflect early childhood learning. And broadening our PUF funding, our program unit funding criteria, to include mild, moderate, and severe needs, and extending that eligibility into grade 1. These recommendations are grounded in the lived experiences of the professionals closest to our classrooms who want the best for our children. They represent practical, meaningful steps towards safer, healthier, and more supportive learning environments. We know the work isn't over and it's just beginning, but the commitment, collaboration, and experience we've seen throughout the process reassure us that with coordinated action, we can move our system forward. These recommendations will not be a surprise for teachers. We know what we need to teach our students, and we need the resources to be able to do it effectively. Alberta can lead the way in ensuring that every child's needs are met and that every educator has the capacity and support to help them thrive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leanne. We're going to take questions now. So Sean, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, Sean Amato with City News. Question for Jason, please. It seems like one of the biggest things on the table here, one of the biggest changes, is the government, the premier, the minister talking about specialized classrooms, which would essentially be maybe a step back from all-out inclusivity that we've been doing in Alberta for a while now. So I guess, what do you make of that? Do you agree with the government that in some cases, some children have needs that are just too complex for a mainstream classroom?
Well, we need to look at these on a case-by-case basis with students and discuss this with their families, their teachers, and the other professionals that are involved in their care. Teachers want to work with all the students in their classrooms, but they need to be supported. And we've seen such a systemic lack of funding over the course of the years that we've gotten ourselves into this crisis. So it is a conversation that I know I've heard government talk about. It is concerning for a lot of my members because they believe in inclusion. They want to work with these students, but they want to have the resources available to them so that students are successful.
Thank you. The government has put essentially 4,500 new educators on the table between new teachers and new education assistants. What number do you have? Like what number from the ATA's position would be a better number to actually address the needs in the classroom?
Well, we would need thousands more teachers. With the 3,000 teachers over the course of the next 3 years, that's part of the legislated settlement, is a drop in the bucket of what we need within our schools. We know that with the growing classrooms that we have across the province, the fact that government keeps talking about new spaces that are going to be added to the system, we need thousands of more teachers in order to address this. And hopefully government is serious about hiring individuals because that is in fact their job.
Thank you for your questions. Stephen, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello, thank you. I guess my question is, organizers on the ground that I've spoken to have been saying that the ATA's response to the Smith government hasn't been nearly radical enough, given what they're being faced with. What would you say to that?
Well, decisions that are made by the association about the advocacy work that we do or decisions on other capacities are made by Provincial Executive Council, which is representing teachers from across the province. And so council would be the ones who are making recommendations about how we address things and move forward. And we have put forward just last week for our own members a framework of how we're going to move forward through the next couple of months and years working with what we see with this government.
There's been, as a follow-up, there's been a lot of talk about organizing a general strike. Bill 9 has made that seem more urgent. What would you say to the prospect of a wildcat strike action?
Well, I'd love to be able to answer that question, except under Bill 2, with my rights being stripped by that, I subject myself to being fined or find myself in any other kind of legal troubles if I talk about the notion of a strike. So I'm fortunate I won't be able to answer that question for you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Janet, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi there. When I asked the minister today about funding and the funding formula, he said, "Oh, happy to hear any feedback or suggestions that people have," but really no commitment to address the funding issues or accept or act on any of the recommendations in this report at this point, until they have the class size data that they're collecting. How do you feel about that lack of commitment?
Well, I mean, when you want to talk about class size data and trying to collect that, then they maybe should not have stopped collecting it in 2019, and we would have the information that we need. Clearly, that would indicate the crisis that we're seeing within our classrooms. I mean, the mess that they're talking about, that we're talking about here today in terms of our classrooms and the lack of support for students, overcrowded classrooms, and the lack of funding for complexities within our classrooms is a byproduct of the underfunding that they've put within the system. So they need to do better in terms of committing to this. They have said time and time again in the past that once they get these reports, they're going to make it public, which they did, and now they're going to move towards it. And as I said in my opening comments, they need to fund it. Albertans won't expect, will not accept less than that.
Just mindful of the timing as well. We know that the minister had the early version of this report during the teacher strike and lockout, during the the contract dispute. What is it like to see a recommendation in there saying we need reduced student teacher ratios, and then have TIBA, the employer, just completely disregard that issue and be unwilling to negotiate it during the contract dispute?
Well, that's one of the things I said in the opening comments as well. We said student teacher ratios with complexity factor is something that we need to see within our province. It was part of our initial proposal when we first started bargaining in 2024. It's a solution that teachers have put forward that they can see will give them real concrete change within their classrooms. To see it in this report tells me that teachers were right. Teachers know what they need within their classrooms to work with students, that teachers were correct in terms of what they wanted to have happen within their schools. So now we need to see government to actually act on these, unlike the Alberta Commission of Learning report that we saw in 2002, where those recommendations never were actually they stayed in the realm of guidelines. They were never actually put into place. We need government to commit to these recommendations, to put them into policy or to put them into the Education Act so that they don't become the whim of political fodder down the road.
Thank you for your questions. Catherine, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, good afternoon. So both yourself and the Premier had mentioned that teachers are seeing being punched, being spat on, being bitten. And I'm wondering, is this sort of thing increasing in frequency, in severity? Yeah, can you just paint the picture a bit for the type of aggression that teachers are facing?
Well, definitely. We did a report in 2020 about aggression in schools, and we had indicated from we had indications from our members that they were seeing aggression, whether it was verbal or physical, within the classrooms, escalating through the course of the pandemic. Especially afterwards when everybody came back to school. We've done subsequent surveys with our members. We call them pulse surveys, and you would be familiar with those, where we've been tracking this as well. And teachers have seen an increase of these incidences. As their class sizes grow, as the resources that they need, as Leanne said in her opening comments as well, that we don't have the supports for students who then become frustrated and they act out. And it's not because of inept teachers, it's not because of the students, it's because the system is failing them. And we've seen that increase over time. And I would maybe invite Leanne to make some comment about this as well, since she was on the panel and heard from the individuals who came into to do presentations to the panel as they were doing their work.
Thank you. Yeah, one of the items I would highlight that came up a few different times was secondary trauma. It was brought up students that may not experience violence towards themselves, but they experience secondary trauma where they were just fearful of getting hurt by some students that were having trouble regulating. Another issue that came up from some of our panelists were that everyone knows what to do, but we don't have the physical space to help somebody co-regulate, to be able to get to them, to sit beside them, to help them re-regulate. So all of these were important issues that came to light that we need to work on. This report helps bring some of it to light, but it's no surprise to teachers and specialists. We all know that it's happening. So we're hopeful now that this is out there that we'll start making some changes. Thank you.
And you mentioned that there's this need to act, and there are different timelines in the report. There's the immediate, the short term, long term. And when you say you need to see the government act, what do you need to see when? Like what are you looking for in terms of timelines for action?
Well, I respect the fact that there's timelines that are within the report there, and we'll go to, sorry, Ms. Watson, I'll go to you in just a moment as well. There are timelines within the report there that we need to see enacted. So I understand the need to, bring in cross-ministry sort of expectations. And this is not the first time we've heard about wraparound services or cross-ministries working together. But, as I was talking to a colleague, there's some easy fixes that they can do in terms of budgeting our funding right now, to go back to an earlier question. So mental health supports within schools, instead of coming out of the education budget, maybe they come out of the mental health budget. Those are easy fixes that cabinet can make, and to ensure that the funding is appropriate, coming out of the right ministry. Hiring teachers, getting EAs in there, splitting classrooms, getting programs are things that the government can do immediately. Making program shifts for a mandatory kindergarten is a midterm one, and that takes some time to make sure that the system can accommodate that, so that's acceptable in that manner. But there are things that need to be done immediately to help address the concerns for teachers in classrooms. And I will go to Ms. Watson if she has something to add.
You captured everything perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Lisa, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
Yep, go ahead, please.
Oh, great, thanks. Sorry, I have trouble with machines. I wanted to ask you, I mean, right now the province appears very eager to collaborate with teachers. And listening to this press conference today, you wouldn't know that this government just shut down the bargaining process and used the notwithstanding clause to force teachers back to work. So I'm wondering what you make of some of the rhetoric that we heard today. I mean, Minister Nicolaides, acknowledging that teachers have to wear multiple hats, and that classrooms, it's just not a feasible environment. We need to make big changes. And the Premier saying that, yes, we need to get the data first and then we'll take action, but we need to show the teachers that we've heard them. I'm wondering how that sits with you, and if that's the kind of rhetoric that the ATA was hearing when you were sitting at a bargaining table.
Well, if it was rhetoric that we were hearing at the bargaining table, we wouldn't have been on strike. We would have come to an agreement that was negotiated, not legislated, on teachers, a deal that teachers had turned down, and to strip away their charter rights. If government was listening before, we wouldn't be in this position that we would have found ourselves in now. So when I hear government, and I hear the minister, and I hear the Premier talk about the things that they say they need to see. For instance, the Premier said today, well, how did we get classes of 40? I don't know how that happened. We shouldn't be having that. The lack of funding over the course of the last 10 years is how we got to this spot. It was their decisions on budget making that got us to this place. So I am fairly cynical. I am fairly untrusting of what I hear from politicians. I need to see the actions, I need to see the funding, and I need to see the changes in our classrooms, and I need to see them move forward with that. Because words are words, but we actually need to see some real changes in our schools.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I'm sorry I haven't been at every one of your recent press conferences, so I need to ask if so this you may have said this already before, but are you or your members volunteering or are eager to volunteer for the Minister's Teacher Advisory Council? Can you talk a little bit about what interest you're hearing on that front, and if you think that that is something that will yield positive results for teachers?
Well, we've heard about this teacher advisory circle before. Minister LaGrange had one. And, we had said then, and I'll repeat our comment then now, you don't need a teacher advisory circle. You have the Alberta Teachers Association, who represents 51,000 teachers across this province, who clearly has indicated time and time again the concerns and issues that teachers see within their classrooms, the solutions that they would put forward in order to make schools better for students and themselves, and have that been ignored. I don't know why the minister would create an extra council to get feedback from teachers when there are thousands of teachers who are willing to work through their association and to give that feedback to them now.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go to Nariman now, and then I'll follow up with you after Janet. Please unmute yourself, Nariman.
Hello. So my question is, I know during the press conference earlier with the Premier and the Education Minister, they talked about potential for separate kind of like ESL classes. They said that there's more and more kids who English is a second language for them, and there may potentially be places for them to kind of learn and get caught up before kind of going back to the main classes. Is that something that you are hearing from your teachers, that, you know, ESL students, it's become a lot harder now when they do come in, especially at older grades, that it's kind of an issue to get them caught up?
Yeah, definitely hearing that from members from across the province, especially in some of our urban areas as well. I would rely on the expertise of my colleagues working with these students in our classrooms and just exactly what do they need. And I think that would be wise of government to do the same thing. I am by no means an expert when it comes to teaching English as an additional language with English language learners. And therefore, I would want to be reliant on my colleagues and the school administrators and school leaders that are working within these programs. What they need is what we should give them so that they can be successful.
And so they also announced $300 million over 3 years for EAs. You say that that could be potentially a lot of help for teachers because it's on top of the 3,000 they're promising to hire. Does that kind of address some of the issues you're facing? I know very quickly you guys mentioned that there's just no spaces, that if a child does need to calm down or so, there's really not many places for that. Do you think that that additional support money is going to go a long way?
Well, any money into the system is going to go a long way, but we'll need more. I can tell you that right now. We have been the least funded school jurisdiction in terms of student expenditures for years. We are seeing government move forward, but these are drops in the bucket for the need that we see in our classrooms. And I want to be clear, I think we need to make sure that we're not just saying that we can't do things within schools because we don't have the space. We need people within these buildings as well to work with kids, and schools will be creative. Leanne used to be an administrator in a small rural school. She could be creative in terms of how to use people within her classrooms to make sure that they are getting the support that they need.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, Janet, it doesn't look like your hand is up anymore. I'm not seeing any additional questions at this time. Oh, Janet, please do go ahead.
I thought you kicked me out of the queue, so I just kind of gave up. I just wanted to ask if I could kindly about there's a couple of recommendations in there that include what sound like restoring things that Alberta already had, right? Like PUF funding for grade ones, and also adding those mild and moderate kids included in that type of funding. And also something that sounds like the regional collaborative services delivery model, where you've got mental health, social services, health workers working with school boards to try and use funding from all those ministries to push in support for kids. So politically, though, because this government eliminated those things, how willing do you think they will be to restore them?
Well, they've put it on paper. They've said they're going to do the work. So we'll see if they have the political will. And I'll tell you right now, teachers and parents and students across this province will hold them to that. Parents, when they cut the PUF funding for those students, people were outraged over that because you're shortchanging the future for those kids. They need that funding in order to be successful in their transition into elementary school. If anything, we would like to see PUF funding expanded to go into grade 2, into grade 3 to support those kids as they move on. So to backtrack on previous cuts that they did, I noticed they sort of, I've shaded it in a way that it doesn't seem like they're restoring something that they cut, but that is in fact exactly what they've done.
I just had a question for Leanne. A weird quirk of this report is that there's these I don't know what the plural of asterisk is, stars. They're stars next to a couple names saying we don't necessarily agree with the conclusions of this report. And it was the chair of Edmonton Public Schools and somebody else from Edmonton Public Schools. What was the dissent on? What do they not agree with in the conclusions?
You know, I'm not entirely sure. That piece was the final report was sent to us all separately. We weren't in a final group setting for that. So that would be a question you would need to send directly to Julie and Dave.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm not seeing any more questions at this time. I'll just give you a moment to gather your thoughts, and if there's any other questions, Jason and Leanne will be happy to answer them. Okay, not seeing anything else at this time, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up. If you need anything else, you can please contact myself, Heather Grant. We will have a recording available and we'll be sending out a news release shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.